Something Sometime. This is a really cool song. It's pretty much based around whole tone for the A section, but it does it in a really unique way that I think works really well, especially contrasted with the B section, which is really diatonic and melodic. Just like we were talking about in the first video, this album has a lot of that, so it'll take a really dense theoretical thing in one part, and then right after that, it'll put in a really melodic, simple part, and I think that makes this album really cool. So we're starting out with a B over D flat chord, a 1 sus chord. Again, I think all of the songs we've talked about so far have started on a 1 suspended. Then we have an A flat minor 7, pretty much the same thing. So that's our starting point. We're in 6/4, 4 and 2, so you count 4 and 2 per bar. Okay, we have an A flat minor 7, going to a C minor major 7, going to a G flat minor major 7, going to a D flat major 9, going to a D flat major 7 sharp 5. Basically, the way that's working, I'm going to give you the simple version first, and then I'm going to give you the more in-depth version. The simple version is, if we think of this here as just an A flat minor major 7, the reason we can do that is written in the score is A flat minor major 7, but then they play a half step up, A minor 7. And what happens is when we play the A minor 7, we get the G necessary to make this an A flat minor major 7. So it's not really an A flat minor major 7, but it sounds like it is because of that half step up chord. So if you think of this as an A flat minor major 7, and you move it up in whole steps, we get a C minor major 7 chord. Keep moving it in whole steps, we arrive at the G flat minor major 7, and on that chord he adds a 13 in. That gives us a tritone in this chord, making it even more unstable, meaning it wants to resolve to D flat major 9. So that would be like a minor 4 going to a 1. And that brings us to the home key, which is D flat. And then on the end here, we tag in a D flat major 7 sharp 5. Okay, so that's the simpler version of how the song is working. It's basically taking augmented, or it's taking minor major 7 chords, moving them in whole steps, until we arrive at our home key. The more in-depth way of describing this would be to look at the bass notes against the upper structures. So the upper structure is like here, we can think of it as a B augmented upper structure, and then for these chords here, for this chord an A augmented, this one's just a normal chord, no upper structure, no augmented upper structure, and then this also an A augmented. So these two are kind of A augmented, these two are kind of B augmented. Really A augmented and B augmented, and then you go up a whole step from that, D flat augmented, E flat augmented, they're all the same augmented, or they're all the same whole tone scale. Right? Because there are only really 2 whole tone scales. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then shoot me an email at jackwaughmusic@gmail.com and we can go into this more in depth. But I'm assuming most of the people watching this already know how a whole tone scale works. So there's only 2 whole tone scales. There's, for our purposes, we'll say D flat because that's the key we're in, and D. Because all the notes, you start there. It's a symmetrical scale. So if you start it from one note, it's going to be the same as another note. So all of the upper structure triads belong to the D flat whole tone scale, meaning we're playing. I think even over this chord he plays, which is a D flat augmented, going to an E flat. Plays that over the G flat minor major 7. So it's definitely a whole tone sound. But the interesting part is, although the upper structures of all of these chords are dealing with D flat whole tone, the bass notes of these 3 chords here are dealing with D whole tone, which is the only other whole tone scale there is, if we look at it as all the same. So basically, this could be an over-complicated way of explaining it, but it is kind of an interesting thing to think about. that's sort of an expression of 12 tone. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, take your first whole tone scale we were dealing with, D flat whole tone over here. Now take your second one, D whole tone. So this whole tone here, D flat, is the division of an octave, D flat to D flat, like we talked about this in the first video, into 6 equal parts. So I'll say that one more time. The D flat whole tone scale, that is the division of the octave into 6 equal parts. So taking D flat to D flat and spacing it out evenly. Perfectly evenly into 6 equal spaces, meaning there's all whole steps in between them. 6 whole steps. So that means we have 6 notes divided equally in this part. And then when we look at D whole tone, we do that same exact pattern, and we divide those other 6 notes into 6 equal parts. So we have the division of D flat whole tone into 6 equal parts, we have the division of D whole tone into 6 equal parts, and if you put those together, you get the division of the octave into 12 equal parts. That's what 12 tone composition is. And to go over that one more time, the upper structures are all in D flat whole tone, and then the bass notes here are dealing with D. Again, not really necessary to explain the composition. It can be as simple as just moving minor major 7 chords in whole steps, but still a cool way of thinking about it. Again, I can go way more into depth over a Skype lesson about that, but for now, we'll move on to the next part. The B section here is all diatonic. So we have a G flat major 7 sharp 11, walking down to an E flat minor 9, down to a C half diminished with a natural 9, to an F7 flat 9. So this is really just like a minor 2/5 that's gonna go to B flat. And it still makes sense. You can still go to a G flat because, you know, the upper structure of G flat major 7 sharp 11 is a B flat minor 7. So whereas this progression would normally go to a B flat minor 7 or minor 11 or whatever, it can also go there because B flat minor 7 is the upper structure of this chord. Other than that, it's all diatonic, it's all in the key. This natural 9 is borrowed from the 6th mode of melodic minor, so a little bit of modal interchange there. Other than that, that pretty much sums up Something Sometime. It's really cool just because whole tone is a very spacey sound, so very keeping with the theme of the album, dealing with really dense sounds contrasted with really simple and effective sounds.